You know that very specific heavy feeling you get when you open a news app these days?
Oh, yeah.
It's not just the bad things are happening, it's the sheer variety of the chaos. You've
Yeah.
got trade wars, actual wars, demographic cliffs, political gridlock.
It feels like the dashboard of your car is lighting up with every single warning light at the same time. Check engine, low oil, tire pressure.
Door ajar.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the natural reaction, I think the gut feeling we all have, is to bundle it all together.
Mm.
We just say the world is collapsing. Like it's one big synchronized
Right,
crisis.
like everything is going off the same cliff together.
But today we're doing a deep dive into a research stack that basically says, stop. That gut feeling is technically wrong.
It is. And honestly, this is one of the most grounding sets of documents we've covered in a while. We're looking at a structural analysis. It's labeled GOA-13.
Okay.
And the core premise is that the world is not collapsing in one way. In fact, thinking that it is actually kind of dangerous. It blinds you to what's really going on.
And the source material has this metaphor that I think we should really stick with. It argues that the major players, China, the US, the EU, and Japan, are running on four completely different governance operating systems.
Right. Think of them like computer OSs. You've got Windows, Mac, Linux, or maybe an old mainframe somewhere.
And they're all malfunctioning.
They are all malfunctioning, yeah. But, and this is the absolute key, they're breaking down in four completely different, coldly incompatible ways.
So our mission today isn't to predict the apocalypse. We're not here to say who's good or bad.
No,
We're basically popping the hood on these four engines to see exactly which part is smoking.
we're drawing a map. Because when you're in a storm, a map doesn't stop the rain, but it does stop you from panicking.
Yeah.
If you know how a system is built to fail, you stop expecting it to act like another one.
You stop looking for American symptoms in a Chinese disease.
Exactly. Or European symptoms in a Japanese condition.
I love that. So let's lay these four systems out. China, the US, the EU, and Japan. And for each one, we're looking at its core, the gradient or pressure driving it. And this part really stood out to me. The stopping condition.
Good stopping condition is maybe the most critical variable here. It's asking a simple question. Can this system hit the brakes?
Does it have an off switch?
Or even just a way to idle? If things get too hot, is there a mechanism to just say, stop? Or is it built to run until it crashes?
And the answers are wildly different. So let's start with system one. The source calls it the internal pressure cooker. We're talking about China.
Right. Now, the common narrative is all about, its economy or its military. But this analysis looks at the internal logic. And it identifies the core of the Chinese OS as party competition.
Which sounds contradictory to us, doesn't it? We hear one-party state and assume there's no competition.
That's the first mistake. It's not democratic competition for public votes. It's this fierce internal competition for survival inside the hierarchy. So the gradient, the pressure driving the whole machine, is internal survival. The whole system is just laser-focused on maintaining control and cohesion from the inside.
So it's not expanding outward for the sake of empire. It's expanding to keep the inside from falling apart.
That's the idea. It's a survival mechanism. But this is where we hit that stopping condition.
Right.
For the Chinese OS, the source says the stopping condition is almost non-existent.
That sounds terrifying. What does that mean in practice?
It means that inside this OS, competition is the same thing as existence. Think about riding a bicycle.
Okay.
If you stop pedaling, you don't just stand still. You fall over. In this system, if the momentum stops, if growth targets aren't hit, if control isn't asserted, the actor, the faction, is just eliminated. There's no safe idle mode.
So it's an engine that has to run at high RPMs all the time just to stay in one piece. It can't coast.
It cannot coast. Which leads us to its failure mode. If you have a machine that can't stop and is under immense internal pressure, how does it break? No. It suffers what the source calls a sudden rupture.
Like a rubber band snapping.
Yes. Or a boiler exploding. The risk isn't a slow, graceful decline. It's a structural discontinuity, a snap. And this explains why their governance feels so tense from the outside. They have to keep pushing.
Because preventing the snap requires more speed and more pressure.
And that creates the loop. It's a high-stakes containment strategy. It looks really strong, but it's brittle.
Okay, so that's the snap. Let's pivot to system two, the United States. The source calls this one market overdrive.
Yeah, and this is the one we're probably most familiar with, but the framing here is pretty jarring. If China is party competition, the U.S. core is market competition.
But we're not just talking about the stock market here, are we?
No, and that's the key distinction. It's the logic of the marketplace applied to, well, to everything.
Mm.
Ideas, status, power, healthcare, attention.
I see.
The pressure is still survival, but it's external pressure. It's about surviving against your competitors in the open arena.
Okay, so let's do the brake test. What's the stopping condition for the U.S.?
The source says it's conditional. But there's a huge catch. In the U.S. operating system, competition is the main source of legitimacy.
Meaning, if you're not competing, you just don't matter.
It's worse than that. If you're not competing, you, in a way, cease to exist. In a pure market logic, if you step out of the race, for innovation, for attention, for money, you disappear. There's no structural safety net that validates you just for being. You have to do.
That adapt or die mentality, it drives a lot of innovation for sure.
Oh, it makes the system incredibly dynamic, the most dynamic on the map. But we're looking at failure modes. And the U.S. failure mode is totally different from China's snap. The source calls it the erosion of the living sphere.
Wow, erosion of the living sphere. That is such a heavy phrase. It sounds almost environmental, but we're talking about society.
It's social and psychological.
Mm.
Because the market logic is so dominant, it doesn't stay in the business section. It leaks out. It starts to eat into daily life.
How so?
It commodifies things that shouldn't be. Commodities, community, family time, mental health, even truth.
So the failure isn't that the government collapses in a coup overnight.
No. The failure is that the market logic just grinds down the human element until the society itself wears thin. It's like termites eating the foundation of a house. The house is still standing, the lights are on, but the integrity is just being turned to dust.
That is a huge distinction. China is a physical, structural rupture. The U.S. is a social, erosive decay.
Exactly. One breaks because it's too rigid, the other breaks because it's too invasive. And if you're just reading headlines, they both look like chaos. But the mechanics are opposites. One is an engine blowing up, the other is a building rotting.
Which brings us to System 3, and this is where the map gets really useful, because usually we just stop at the big two. But let's talk about the European Union.
The EU is fascinating here because it is the perfect counterexample to both the US and China.
The source calls it the friction of righteousness.
Right. So the core of the EU's OS isn't competition at all. It's norms and law.
So, rules.
But more than just rules, it's about the framework of the rules. In the EU system, competition isn't the engine. It's seen as an object of restraint. The whole point of the operating system is to check power, to balance interests, to ensure fairness.
So if the US and China are gas pedals, different kinds, but still accelerators, the EU is the brake pedal.
It's a car made almost entirely of brake pedals. The pressure driving the system is the urge to perfect that framework, to make sure every rule is ethically and legally bulletproof.
Okay, so stopping condition.
Excessive. That's the term the source uses. There are stopping conditions everywhere. GDPR, AI regulations, consensus requirements, veto powers. The vehicle has so many safety features that it struggles to actually move.
And the failure mode, I'm guessing, is?
Decision paralysis, or just stagnation.
That makes so much sense. We see this with how the EU handles, well, almost anything big. It takes forever.
Because the system prioritizes being right, legally and morally correct, over being fast. And the failure is that while they're perfecting the rules of the game has already moved on without them.
So it's a failure of relevance through good intentions. While China is racing toward a rupture and the U.S. is racing toward erosion, the EU is failing because it's trying so hard not to make a mistake.
Correct. It's a static failure. It's the failure of standing still in a moving world.
Okay, that leaves System 4, Japan. And I feel like Japan often gets left out of these global crisis talks because, well, it just seems so quiet.
And that quietness is exactly the point. The source calls this OS the silent inertia.
Silent inertia. What's the core?
Inertia and harmony.
Harmony sounds a lot nicer than erosion or rupture.
It is, until it becomes a trap. The gradient here is survival plus avoidance. The main goal of the system is to avoid conflict, avoid drastic change, avoid friction.
So how does it handle the brakes? What's the stopping condition?
This is maybe the most unique part. The source says the stopping condition is non-explicit.
Meaning, you don't even know if you've stopped.
Exactly. In the US, if you stop competing, you go bankrupt. You know it. In China, you get purged. In Japan, the argument is that the system is effectively stopped in terms of dynamic growth, reform, but it's not recognized as having stopped.
It's the illusion of continuity.
It's like Wile E. Coyote running off the cliff. He's just hovering in midair. As long as he doesn't look down, he hasn't fallen yet.
And the role of competition.
Avoid as much as possible. Don't rock the boat.
So what's the failure mode? It can't be a rupture.
No, the failure mode is quiet hollowing out.
That sounds like a ghost story.
It kind of is. There's no explosion, no market tearing up the streets, no dramatic paralysis, just a quiet, invisible depletion of energy. The population shrinks, the economy stagnates, the facade stays perfect, trains on time, streets are clean, but the inside is slowly emptying out.
Wow. Okay, so let's just recap the 4 flavors of failure we have on the table. China, sudden rupture. U.S. erosion of the living sphere. EU decision paralysis. And Japan, quiet hollowing out.
It sounds bleak when you list them like that. But remember, this is a map. The point isn't just to say we're all doomed. The point is to understand why these systems clash so badly.
And this gets to the asymmetry part of the analysis. The source makes a really big deal about the danger of seeing things as symmetric. What does that mean?
This is crucial for anyone trying to make sense of the news. Most of our stories are built around a simple binary. U.S. versus China, the Thucydides trap. 2 superpowers racing for the top spot.
Right. We picture 2 race cars, side by side, engines revving.
Which implies symmetry. It implies they're playing the same game with the same rules. But our OS map just showed us that's completely false.
Because one is running on party survival and the other is running on market legitimacy. They aren't even on the same track.
Exactly. And then when you add the EU and Japan, the picture gets so much clearer. If you only look at the US and China, you think the whole world is in overdrive. But the EU proves that a major global player can fail because it can't speed up.
And Japan proves you can fail by being too stable.
Yes. So the crisis isn't that everyone is doing the same thing. The crisis is the friction. The source calls it shear. Between these totally incompatible systems.
Shear, like in engineering, when 2 forces are pushing in unaligned directions.
Yeah. Imagine a gearbox. One gear is spinning at 10,000 RPM because it's the US market and it can't stop. Another gear is square-shaped because it's the EU and it lives rules.
Okay.
Another one, China, is expanding because of internal heat, and the Japan gear is just sort of quietly fading away.
And we're all wondering why the transmission is making that horrible grinding noise.
That grinding noise is global geopolitics.
That makes so much sense. We look at a trade war and think, why can't they just agree? But they literally can't. Their operating systems have different core functions. One breaks if it stops. One breaks if it moves too fast.
It removes the villainy from the equation, in a way.
What do you mean?
Well, we tend to project our own values. When the EU passes a restrictive law, an American might say, why are they so anti-innovation? But looking at the map, you realize they aren't being anti-innovation. They are successfully running the norms and law OS. For them, that's a win.
And when China acts aggressively, it's the logical output of an OS trying to avoid an internal rupture.
It moves the conversation from good guys versus bad guys to mechanics versus mechanics, and that lets you keep a much cooler head. You stop expecting the EU to suddenly act like Silicon Valley. It can't. Its OS forbids it.
So it's about managing expectations. You stop projecting your own OS onto someone else's hardware. But is there any good news here? The source says something like crisis does not synchronize.
Yes. This is the hopeful aha moment buried in all this.
Explain that. Because 4 broken systems doesn't sound very hopeful.
Well, think about it. If the whole world ran on the US operating system, we would have global erosion of the social fabric. If it all ran on the Chinese OS, we'd have a global pressure cooker.
But because they're different.
They interfere with each other. The EU's brakes sometimes slow down the US's erosion. Think about privacy laws. The US's market pressure forces China to adapt. Japan's stability provides a ballast.
So the messiness is actually a feature, not a bug. The fact that they're incompatible prevents any single failure mode from taking over the whole planet.
In a way, yeah. We're saved by our incompatibility. It prevents a catastrophic monoculture. If everyone failed in the same way at the same time, that would be it.
That's a fascinating, if a little chaotic way to see global gridlock. It's a safety valve.
But we still have to navigate that shear. The grinding gears are still dangerous.
So let's wrap this up. We have this map. We see the 4 breakages: rupture, erosion, paralysis, hollowing. What should you, as a listener, actually do with this?
It's a tool for reading the world. When you see a headline, just pause. And instead of getting that pit in your stomach, ask yourself, which OS is generating this? And which failure mode is lurking behind it?
It separates the narrative runaway, the scary stories we tell ourselves, from the structural reality.
It lets you read the news without the heart palpitations. You can say, That's the USOS doing its erosion thing again, or that's the EU freezing up and instead of just the world is ending.
Before we go, I want to leave everyone with a few provocations from the source that really stuck with me. These aren't answers, just questions to carry around.
Let's hear them.
First one, we often fear a loud explosion, but are we missing the quiet hollowing out?
That's the Japan lesson. We watch for the war, but we miss the slow decline.
Second, if we stop expecting every country to fail in the same way, how does the news look different tomorrow?
It changes everything. You stop looking for a fever when the patient has a broken bone.
And the final one, which I think is the most profound. Are we mistaking movement for progress and stopping for stability?
That's the one to chew on. Just because a country is making noise doesn't mean it's fixing anything. And just because it's quiet doesn't mean it's safe.
A huge thank you for listening to this deep dive. It's a bit dense, but I think once you see the map, you really can't unsee it.
Absolutely. It's a new lens for a chaotic world.
So our challenge to you for this next week, pick a news story, any story, and try to figure out which OS failure mode it fits into. Is it a snap, an erosion, a paralysis, or a hollow?
You'll be surprised how clearly they fit.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.
Take care.